welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Ashley Manatic.
Hi, Ashley.
See, there's benefits to being the second speaker, because half the room gets up and leaves. Which is a good thing for me. But, I was telling a friend of mine that I'm staying with this story. I was on the plane over here, and I was just sitting there, and, I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's the stewardess, and she goes, "Honey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." She goes, "You just look really, worried or something." And I go, "Oh, no, I'm just thinking." And she looks at me in all seriousness, and she goes, "Maybe you should stop that." And I thought, oh my God, she knows who I am. But, it's just like my thinking is so, I get in so much trouble with it. It's, my first sponsor always used to tell me, your mind's a very dangerous place and don't go there alone. And I try not to. But, I guess I'll give a little background information because I have some time to talk, and if anybody knows, I'm not a very long talker. So I grew up, like somebody said, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and nobody probably knows where that is, except for Melissa, because she's been there. And somebody else does, good. And I had a very abnormal childhood. The outside, the first thing I learned from the get-go was if the outside looks good, it doesn't matter what happens on the inside. And that was my family to a T. We had the house, we had the cars, we had weekend houses, and we were just utterly dysfunctional. And, both my parents were addicts. My dad used to beat my mom. We were just completely dysfunctional. And when I was 7 years old, I saw my dad died of a cocaine overdose. And, one thing I could always relate to when I went to a meeting was people would talk about how they felt different. I always felt different. I hear that every time I go to a meeting without fail. Somebody says, before I started using, I just always felt different. And, my thing was, it was like a part of me, I was different. Like, I knew I was. Like, nobody else I went to school with saw their dad die of a cocaine overdose. Nobody else lived with the family that I lived with, and that's until you come to NA, and then you realize everybody's dysfunctional. But, I can't say it that, I was 7, and I remember it, and I felt it, but I wasn't scarred for life, per se. But after that, my mom just went completely downhill, and, my sister ended up taking over custody of me and my brother. And, and I just started becoming a normal child, as best as you could without your parents, I guess. And I got involved in school, and I got involved in sports. And but there's one thing I can say is that I never wanted to be like my parents. I hated my mother, and I didn't want to die like my dad. And I had a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, and I did not want to use drugs or alcohol. But obviously that didn't stop me. So, it was just, I started dating somebody older than me when I was young. I know the $1 million question is, how old is she and when did she get clean? And, I started using drugs when I was 12, and, it just progressed. It progressed very rapidly, and today I'm really grateful for that because I don't have any illusions. I don't think that it was just a phase. Normal people don't stick needles in their arms, ever. And normal people don't ever think it's a good idea. So if you're sitting in this room and you haven't done it, but you've thought about it and thought maybe it was a good idea, you belong here, trust me. And And so, it just kind of started then. And, like I said, there's something about using when you're 12. You instantly have to lie, you instantly have to manipulate, you instantly have to steal, because you have no ways and means. And then, I started, probably the weirdest thing, and it's like the depths of addiction. I started sleeping on park benches and under bridges, and I wasn't homeless. Nobody had kicked me out. I just couldn't deal with the stress. And I really don't know what's worse, being homeless because you have to be, or being homeless because you don't want to deal with the people at your home. And, I went to rehabs and things, but from every single person I heard, you're too young. She's too young. It's just a phase. And, so it went on a little longer. And then, I got an apartment with my boyfriend. I don't know. I was 15. I was going to play housewife, I guess. I have no idea. But, so we got this apartment, and, we had a couch, and that was it was the multi-purpose. It was the bed, it was the dining room, it was the only piece of furniture in the entire place. And, but I was just so happy to be in this apartment and thinking I was being productive or something. And, and then the last night I used, I had found I was real clever, and you know how we are, and got drugs and came back, and my boyfriend's sitting there, and if anybody was in a relationship with me, or using, I don't know, you have to share, and I wasn't in the mood to share, so I started a fight, because it was like that saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens when you're fighting stays when you're fighting. Didn't matter. You could do anything, and we were fighting, so it doesn't count. So I started this big fight over something and locked myself in the bathroom, and I woke up 7 hours later, and the needle was still hanging out of my arm, and the door was still closed. And I remember looking at the cell phone, and there was no missed calls. And the thing is this had happened before, but I had never felt that alone ever before. And I had this moment of clarity, because I don't think clearly. And I still to this day don't have a lot of sane thoughts. And but something came to me, and I realized that it was partially my fault. Because there were people that would have been calling my cell phone, but I just hit that reject button so many times that they stopped calling. And there were people that would have beaten down that door, but I had stopped talking to them. And it was that knowing that if it was partially my fault, then it was partially my responsibility to fix it. But as long as, I was the victim of everything, then it was your job to fix it, because I'm just the victim. And I didn't know what to do, but I felt so alone in that despair, and I couldn't, I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was so sick and tired of being miserable. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I hated doing things I didn't want to do. I hated getting up every morning. I hated it. That feeling of just another day, why? And so I didn't know what else to do. So I decided I was going to go to rehab again, because the only thing I did know at rehab, it was like a vacation. They took care of you, and they listened to you complain, and you could whine, and the therapist would say, it's okay, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And then all the other consequences would go away. After about spending a week in rehab, then my family would start to talk to me again, and and everybody would like me, and people would kind of forget that I stole money from them, or that I just broke into their house last weekend. So it was kind of, rehab was like a get out of jail free card. So I didn't know what else to do, and I wasn't really convinced I wanted to stop using, so I thought I'd just go to rehab and see what happened. And I went to rehab, and I can't even describe the feeling. It was like I didn't want to be there, but a part of me was relieved. Every time I went to rehab, I was just relieved. It was like I didn't have to play the game anymore. And I remember sitting there, we went to the H&I meeting. Somebody brought in a meeting, and it was this older guy. He's probably about 55, and instantaneously I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is this? I don't have to listen to this. I don't have anything to relate to him. But I sat there, and what I noticed about this guy was he was happy. He was really happy. And his life wasn't fantastic. He didn't have this really great job or these really great things, but he was just happy, and I could see it, and he wasn't lying about it, because I knew about the fake happy. I was really good at the fake happy, and he wasn't doing it. And he said he came to NA meetings, so I thought, maybe I'll give it a go. And before I could give it a go, they decided that they didn't want me in Pittsburgh anymore. So they sent me to Canton, Pennsylvania. And I hope as long as you all live, you never have to learn of where this place is. Because it's basically hell on earth. No, I'm just kidding. But, and that's where I started my recovery. And the people in the meetings, and that's what kept me coming back. Were the people in the meetings. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the steps. I didn't understand anything anybody talked about. And to be honest, I wasn't listening anyway. But you were nice to me. And you didn't judge me. And if you did judge me, you didn't do it to my face. You're really good about hiding it. And I was okay with that, as long as I didn't know. And it's so cliche, but like everybody else has said, I felt a part of. I didn't feel different anymore. And, like Chris was sharing, when people talked about 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough, and I wanted to stop, but I couldn't stop, that was me, and when they talked how they couldn't look at themselves in the mirror, and they hated everything about themselves, and I got it. And I probably had about 4 months clean, and I was getting a little of it, but to be honest, I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And I was miserable because I had done a first step knowing that drugs wasn't working. All the problems I had were still there when I was done using. There was never enough. And a part of me knew that drugs weren't the answer. And when you took that away from me, because as long as I was using it, I thought drugs were the answer, it was like I'd keep going around in that vicious cycle, but I thought I was getting somewhere. When I finally realized I wasn't getting anywhere, I had no idea what to do. And I can't, that's what, I'm here because I can't cope with life like a normal human being. And so you take the drugs away, and I'm like in the fog. I don't understand. And so I had a sponsor. I called her my sponsor, but I didn't really call her very often. But I called her, and I told her how I was feeling. I said, I'm really miserable. And she goes, Ash. And I go, what? She goes, when we're in the meeting and there's those steps on the wall. And I go, yeah. And she goes, maybe you should try working them. And I hung up the phone. And I sat in the pain a little while longer, and I called her back, a week or two later, because at this point I was thinking about suicide because I just didn't get it. I didn't understand. I couldn't sit in a chair for more than 5 minutes with 3 months clean. I was out of my skin. I don't know how newcomers do it here with hour-and-a-half meetings. We only had hour meetings, and I thought I was going to kill myself. And I wanted to know, how do they sit still? How, in that self-obsession, everybody's looking at me. I know they're looking at me. I know their back's to me, but they're looking at me. If they could be, they would be. And it's that just nonstop. And I couldn't take it, and I didn't know what else to do, because like I said, I knew drugs weren't going to work. And so when I finally called her back, and she goes, we need to start on the second step. And I go, okay. And she goes, I just want you to act as if. And I go, what the hell does that mean, act as if? She's like, just act like you want to be in the meeting. Act like maybe you're listening. Act like you care. And I thought, I'm good at acting. I've done this all my life. I can do this. And so I did. I started to sit in the front of the meeting. And I got the head nod and the down when people were sharing. I'd be like, And I wasn't listening, but I acted like I was listening. And then every once in a while I would catch myself, I heard what you said. I got it. I heard you. I got that sentence. I remember, and I listened. And then I started to notice people would come in the meetings torn apart, ripped apart, crying hysterical 1 week, and the next week they'd come back laughing. And I heard people come in saying they couldn't get a day clean, and then the next week they had 7. And I thought, something's working in these rooms. Something is working. And what I found out in here, to this day, what I find out in here is when I look I will find whatever it is I'm looking for. And if I want to find hope, I will find it in here. And if I want to find hopelessness, I'll find it in here. But it's about what I'm looking for. And, it's about me and my perceptions today, because my thinking, like I've said before, is completely distorted. So when I started to change my thinking, I started to see the world differently. And I saw what was happening in here. And, and I still didn't really believe it. And so I started, I've heard this many times, and my sponsor told it to me too, you don't have to believe in this. You just have to believe that I believe. And I go, well, I believe that you believe. You go all the time. And she goes, well, good. Just start with that. And so that's what I did. And, and I made the decision to keep working on with the steps. And I moved back home to Pittsburgh, thank God. And, I threw myself back into the fellowship, going to meetings and getting involved. And I had a sponsor, and I continued working the steps. And my life got better. For 2.5 years, my life just got better and better and better. And before I know it, I had things. I had a car, and I had an apartment, and I was going to school, and I had a job. Somebody actually thought I was useful at something. And I had the boyfriend, and I did wait a year to start dating, just for the record. And I had all these things that I never even wanted when I walked in the door. And all of a sudden, they were starting to become more important than going to meetings and working the steps and calling my sponsor. And I didn't even want them when I got here. All I wanted when I got here was to stop using and, like I said, to be able to sit still and not rip my hair out. Now, all of a sudden, these things, the outside trying to fix the inside, were taking control. And that feeling of more and more, and I never had enough. I wasn't working enough. I never had enough money. I wasn't going to school enough. I wasn't buying. I needed more things. And, and then, my mom passed away. And she was an addict like us. And by this point, I was blessed with working the steps, and I was blessed with the fact that I didn't hate her like I'd hated her, I talked about when I was using. I understood that she was an addict, and I had empathy and compassion that the steps teach us in here, and that understanding. So it was going to the funeral was hard because it was my mom, but it was also a slap in the face of, this is what happens when you use. And it was a slap in the face of, okay, I might swear here because I can't think of a better word. You ungrateful little bitch. You have what people are dying for, and you don't care. And that's kind of what it was, because I wasn't going before meetings. I wasn't staying after meetings. I didn't have any more commitments. I rarely showed up at my home group. There were a couple things that were saving me. Those foundations they talk about, people, places, and things, weren't there. Everybody I talked to was in recovery. I only went to places where there were no drugs, and I didn't have any drugs around me. And if it wasn't for those strong foundations I built, I probably would have used before my mom died. Because this program, I had let those outside things try and fill that void, and it doesn't work. And at that funeral, I remember just thinking, like, we have it. In these rooms, we got it. What my dad died from, what my mom died from, what people are dying from right now, what people will die from. We have the answer in here. And we have to give it back. And it was that, that bittersweet of being sad that somebody didn't make it in here, that there are people dying tonight that would love to be sitting in this room, but they'll just never find it. And there was that feeling of knowing that once we found it, I don't ever have to go back. That this program's taught me that I don't have to die like that. Like Chris was saying, I don't have to die alone and miserable and away from the ones I loved like my mom did. And I remember talking to my sponsor, and I remember her saying, Ash, I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time, but I just didn't know. She goes, but when you don't give back, you're killing people. And that just hit me funny, and I believe it today. I believe it, and I believe that any person that has a day clean, has a minute clean, that's sitting in this room right now and hasn't used for the past 20 minutes I've been talking, has something to offer for the person that can't stop. And because I was that person, it works two ways in here. There's the people that are reaching out the hand to ask for help, and there's the other people that are taking the hand and giving the help. And when I first got here, when I put my hand out and I asked for help, I got it. Without fail, whenever I asked for help, somebody always reached out and helped me. And it just hit me that with, coming up on 3 years clean, there were people that were reaching their hand out, and I wasn't reaching back out to help them. And so I started going back to meetings regularly, and I got a home group, and I got a sponsor again. I kept my sponsor, but I actually started calling her again, and I started working some steps again in my life, and lo and behold, things got better. I wasn't so consumed with getting more, and I wasn't so worried about what I didn't have. I actually appreciated what I had, and that's why I love this program, is when I do what the book says, my life's good. When I start getting in the way and me and the committee start talking, then things start getting bad. And, I love Narcotics Anonymous, and I do believe that we're in the business of saving lives here. And I think that this program has so much to offer. And, and when I was I lived in fear. Like, you would never believe fear. Fear of people walking on the same side of the sidewalk as me. Fear of leaving Bethel Park because it might shut down if I left. I don't know. And just that fear. I couldn't make any decision because I was afraid it was the wrong one. And just, that consuming fear. And I don't live like that today. I just don't. Because I know, working the steps, I got to God. And I know it's going to be okay. And I have people in this program that, no matter how bad I mess up or fall short, if I don't pick up, people will help me rebuild back to pieces. And that's something I could have never dreamt of, was not having to live by that fear, because that's all I knew. And, my life is just not like that today. Anybody knows the reason I'm sitting here is because, in September, I came to London for 4 months. I didn't know anybody. I knew absolutely nobody on this continent, all of Europe. And I got on a plane by myself, got off the plane by myself, and then it hit me, what the hell are you doing? And but I went to a meeting, and I put up my hand and I asked for help, and I got it, and I don't think I actually ever answered the $1 million question. I got clean when I was 15 years old. I'm 21 now. I have 5.5 years clean. And my life is more than I ever even dreamt of. And it's not, like I said, I've learned, it's taken a while, and sometimes I still go there, but I've learned it's not the material things. I can sit and be still. I can be by myself for periods of time. Even when I first, up until 2 years clean, I always had to be with somebody. I didn't go to a meeting alone. I didn't do things alone. And, I can be alone today. And, I have that peace of mind, that serenity that I saw, like, so-called normal people having, and I have it today. And it's through these steps, and it's through this program. And I'm kind of a productive member of society. I do things like go to the post office and the bank, and I have reasons for being there. I still get excited when I go to the post office, and I have these packages that I'm sending to people that want them, and it still blows my mind away. Things like that still make me happy, because at the end of the day, I don't forget where I came from, because it's easy. I've gone there, and I can forget really quick what it was like. But I don't do that today, because everything's really great when I remember that I was just a junkie that couldn't get a day clean. Everything is fantastic then. And, because I used to watch, when you're in that state where you kind of like open up the blinds just a little bit and look out the street, and I used to see people doing things like washing their car and like taking laundry to the laundromat and like getting mail out of the mailbox. I used to be like, I want that. I want to do that. And I hate doing the laundry today, but I'm glad that I care that my clothes are clean. But, that's what matters to me today. Those little things that meant so much to me when I was using and I didn't understand how to get there, it matters to me today. It matters that people call my phone and ask me how I'm doing. It matters that I call people and ask them how they're doing. Because there was a point where I didn't know how to do that. I remember having about 6 months clean, and my sister called at the placement I was in, and she goes, "Hey, Ashley." I go, "Hi, Melissa, how are you doing?" And she goes, "What?" I was like, "How are you doing?" She goes, "I don't think you've ever asked me that." And I go, "You're probably right." Never really occurred to me right now because I don't really care how you were doing, to be quite honest, because I'm doing not very well. So, but those are the things today that matter to me, and to be in a room full of people, that don't know me. And if you're laughing, I hope you know that means you can relate, which may not be a good thing. I know it's hard to believe, but my thinking can be a little sick. But I heard a loud chuckle over there. Better watch out for him. No, I'm just kidding. But my life today, I can't express what this program's given me. And it's this program. It's not me. I don't do this, okay? What I do is stick needles in my arms and then find ways and means to get more to stick in my arm. That's what I do. You take this program away and you leave me to my own devices, and that's where I end up. Every bit of serenity and peace and happiness I have in my life is from coming here and doing what people in here told me to do. And I believe today in giving back, and I believe that I'm a better person when I give back, because when I don't give back, that means I'm focusing a lot of time on myself. And the problem with me focusing a lot of time on myself is that, like I said, me and the committee have a very strong relationship up here in my brain. And when I spend too much time alone focusing on me, really crazy things start to seem like good ideas. And I call somebody in recovery and they go, "You know what, I was thinking about this." And they go, "Why the hell were you thinking about that?" And I think, well, it's probably because I've been sitting in my house for 8 hours by myself and I haven't talked to another recovering addict. And so I've come to find out that when I help somebody else, I just don't focus on me that much. And that's good, because, that's how this program works, where people not focusing on themselves and focusing on me helped me stay clean. So when I focus on somebody else for a little bit, I help them stay clean. And I don't know, I'm really grateful to be here. I'm sorry, I'm just like a little jet lagged, I think, or something. I just feel a little, and but I'm so grateful to be here. And the most beautiful thing about this program, I think, is that it gives us our lives back. It helps us do those things we wanted to do. It helps us not go down those roads that we went down. But more than that, it helps us help other people get their lives back and help other people not go down those roads. And, welcome to NA if you're new. And if you don't believe this program works, then I just, I would think to ask yourself, then why the hell are you sitting in this meeting? And why the hell is everybody else sitting in this meeting? And, this program's worked, and it saved my life. And today, for me, it is about life or death. When I first got here, it wasn't about life or death. I had nothing to live for. I hated all of my friends. I wasn't living for them. I hated myself. I wasn't living for myself. I had no objects. I had nothing to live for when I got here. It wasn't about life or death, because there were some days I wish I would have died. Today, it's about life or death, because I don't want to go back out and risk losing the life that Narcotics Anonymous has given me. And I don't know. I really think that's all I got, and I'm just very grateful that I was able to share. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. Nawpod is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to nawpod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.